Hello, humans of the internet. Happy Friday. You all have made it. For those of you who will be in person humans starting Tuesday, I will see you all then, hopefully. For those of you that will be online still, be virtual humans, I will see you all here on Tuesday too. Don't forget, we do have a 3-day weekend because of Labor Day, so no assignments or school on Monday. Y'all need a day off, take it. And then we'll start back up on Tuesday. But before we get to Tuesday, I want to go through the last two parts of the grapes notes. So if you have already pulled that up, we are filling out the E and S today. Figured I'd just combine these two because they kind of play together. So we'll work on these two today, and then you all will have the weekend to kind of just relax and get ready for next week and what comes next. But with that being said, let's get into it. And our objective and question is be able to explain how individuals made money and the roles that those different jobs had in society. And then your daily question, which you should have already seen, is how do you think people in ancient Mesopotamia made their money? So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a better idea of both of these. And start off with, we're going to look at jobs. So jobs are important. Helps you get paid to buy things you need, want, all that fun stuff. All of us at some point will have to get a job of some sort. Hopefully it's something you enjoy doing like I do. But odds are the jobs that will be available when you guys start looking for them will be different than the ones that were offered when I was looking for a job. And they're going to be certainly different than people in ancient Mesopotamia had to offer. I don't believe they had computer programming and Twitch, Twitch, Twitch. Anyway, they didn't have that. So, what do they do? What did these people do for a living when they don't have jobs that we're used to now? Before we go into that, I do want to point out they practice what I would call a market economy, meaning they manufactured goods and food to feed themselves as well as trade. So the idea was they grew enough food for themselves and then they traded the extra, and they also had manufacturing. So the fact that they're making manufactured goods kind of makes this a market economy and not just a traditional, which would be just them growing enough food for themselves. They're growing food with the purpose of feeding themselves, obviously, and then any extra they had, they would trade, but they were also making other things that they could trade as well. So I would argue that this is a market economy. And some of the jobs that these people did are jobs that are still around today, almost 5,000 years later, like farming. Farming is still a thing, especially here. Odds are you've seen a cornfield or soybean field recently. Farming is still a thing. Brick masons, so people who like builders, basically. Those are still around. Soldiers, they're still around. Merchants, businessmen, basically. Merchants, just a fancy way of saying business owners. Clothes makers, you might see it called artisans. So those kind of people. And then government workers. So all of those jobs were around in ancient Mesopotamia, just like they are now. They just look different thanks to technology and human technology, all that fun stuff. So you might be like, oh, this is great. They're making everything they need. They got all the stuff they want. They're good. The problem is very few civilizations are self-sufficient, meaning very few civilizations are able to make or grow everything they need or want. So that forced the Mesopotamians to trade. Even today, we're in the kind of same boat too, where there are some things that we just can't grow or make here in the U.S. that have to come from other places. We can't grow like bananas and just different types of food aren't able to grow in the U.S., so we have to trade for it from places where it can grow. One of my personal favorites is coffee. Coffee is not something that can be grown in many parts of the U.S., And so a lot of the coffee that we get comes from Central and South America and places where it's easier to grow coffee and stuff like that. So we trade for it because we have stuff they want. They have the coffee that we want. So we kind of work things out to trade to get stuff that we just simply aren't available because of geography. So maybe what are they trading? What would the Mesopotamians want? What are they willing to give up? Mesopotamia, thanks to the two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, was great for farming. But as far as other natural resources go, they didn't have a lot. They wanted to make things like bronze weapons, which they discovered, special types of pots, jewelry, and other foods that aren't natural to the region. The problem with making bronze weapons is you need tin and copper, both of which are not abundantly found in Mesopotamia, so you have to get it from somewhere else. Well, okay, they want tin and copper. What can they give for it? Thanks to the division of labor, which we talked about a while back, people could specialize in certain tasks that allow the Mesopotamians to do other things. One of those was develop a surplus or extra amount of food, particularly barley, which is just a type of grain. Mesopotamians grew a ton of barley, and they knew that other people needed or wanted barley for food, for other purposes. So they used this surplus of barley and a few other things they made to trade with their neighbors to get the tin and copper and other things they needed to make weapons and all that stuff. We have evidence, I say we as like historians have evidence that says that they sent trade routes as far west as Greece and as far east as modern day Pakistan, so to get items that they couldn't normally get themselves. So it kind of shows you where they went, what they were willing to do to get those things. Now, that being said, money and society are very much connected here like they are in other parts of the world and other civilizations that we'll study. Often who had the most money determined who had the most power and who had the greatest social standing in society. So same thing with Mesopotamia here. The more money you had, the better off you were economically as well as socially. What you did, your job basically mattered as well. They put a high value on certain jobs like priests, merchants, and government workers, and less value on farmers and slave labor. So think this pyramid here, a king, nobility, probably government workers up here, the priests, scribes, and merchants I would put here. So the lower you go on this social scale, the less money you had, and more than likely the less power you had. So the idea is very much similar to other societies we'll look at in the future. Often what you did for a living mattered almost as much as how much you made doing it. So the higher you are, the better job you had, the better off you were. So going off of this, kind of like other civilizations we'll look at, they developed and maintained this idea of a social order. It largely depended on what jobs people did, what money they had, and it was often difficult to move from one to the other. If you remember the other day when we looked at the power structure here in Mesopotamia, it's almost identical to that, with the king at the top and then followed by priests, merchants, artisans, farmers, slaves, and so on. One thing I do want to mention is that, and this will show up in other places as well, oftentimes children were expected to take the job their parents had. So whatever your mom or dad, typically what your dad did for a living is what you would do as well. So the chance of you moving from one part of the social order to another is very, very slim. I won't say it won't happen, but there's not a good chance it will. And so often it was tough to get out of that social order that you were in. One thing we haven't talked a lot about is what role women played in Mesopotamian society. Oftentimes, ancient civilizations were what we would call patriarchies, which simply means that oftentimes everything was dominated by men, and women had little to any say in how things were run, how business was conducted, or certainly how wars were fought. So, if any of you ladies have any dreams of going into the military and or running a good business or a government or becoming president one day, it's a good thing you live today and not in Mesopotamia, because the chance of you doing that then were not good. Often you were expected to stay at home and take care of children if you had any, and the chances of you moving up to positions of authority, whether that's in government or in the military, were very, very slim. There are examples of women who did get some authority as far as government, military, business, what have you, but often it was just that one woman. It wasn't like a movement, if you will. It's just the one woman who managed to know some people who got her into a position, but oftentimes women had very little chance of moving up politically, economically, or militarily. So that is actually all I have for you all. The next slide should have the Discovery Ed readings I want you to do. You're reading pages 2 and 5 of that. And then you will have the questions after that in the module. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good weekend, and I will see some of you, well, actually, I'll see all of you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend, guys.